Section 16. Grounds for corrective action continued. Arizona Commissioner's Standards. Requirements for licensees. Introduction. The small things that end careers. Jessica used to think discipline only came from major violations, fraud, theft, or serious misconduct. But as she continued learning, she realized something surprising. Some of the most common disciplinary actions come from things that seem small: putting up a sign without permission, not paying a renewal fee on time, holding on to a document too long. Individually, they don't feel like big mistakes, but under Arizona law, they are all grounds for corrective action. This section continues where Section 15 left off, showing how everyday actions, if done incorrectly, can lead to serious consequences. Improper compensation and rebates. A licensee cannot pay or receive any rebate, compensation, or commission in violation of Arizona law. This often happens when agents try to get creative with deals. For example, offering an undisclosed rebate to a buyer to win a transaction, or accepting compensation from someone other than the employing broker. Another example is splitting commission with an unlicensed individual or providing a kickback for referrals outside legal guidelines. Jessica realized that money is one of the most heavily regulated areas in real estate. If compensation is not handled correctly and transparently, it can quickly lead to discipline. Inducing a party to break a contract. A licensee cannot encourage or induce a party to break an existing contract for personal gain. For example, if an agent contacts a seller who is already under contract and convinces them to cancel so they can relist at a higher price with a new agent, that is a violation. Another example is persuading a buyer to walk away from a deal just so the agent can rewrite the contract under better terms for themselves. Jessica saw how tempting this could be in a competitive market, but also how clearly the law prohibits it. Unauthorized signs. Permission matters. Placing a for sale or for rent sign on a property without written authorization is a violation. This might seem obvious, but it happens more often than you think. For example, an agent assumes verbal permission is enough, or places a sign on a property they believe will be listed soon. Another example is putting up directional signs or marketing signage on neighboring properties without consent. The rule is simple: no written authorization, no sign. Promotions and contests. When marketing crosses the line, licensees cannot solicit business through promotions involving games of chance, lotteries, or speculative contests unless specifically authorized. For example, offering entry into a raffle for a prize in exchange for attending an open house or completing a transaction can be considered a violation. Another example is running a spin-to-win promotion tied to real estate services. Jessica realized that while marketing creativity is encouraged, it must stay within legal boundaries. If it feels like gambling or chance-based incentives tied to business, it's likely not allowed. Failure to pay renewal fees. Failing to pay renewal fees on time is not just an administrative issue, it is a compliance violation. For example, an agent who completes all their continuing education but forgets to submit payment before the deadline risks not only license expiration, but also disciplinary consequences. Jessica learned that deadlines in real estate are not flexible, especially when it comes to licensing. Trust accounts and client funds. Zero tolerance. Area 1 of the most serious violations involves mishandling trust funds or failing to maintain proper escrow records. This includes failing to maintain accurate records of client funds, mixing personal funds with client funds, using client money for unauthorized purposes. For example, holding earnest money in a personal account instead of a trust account is a major violation. Another example is failing to document deposits or withdrawals properly. Jessica quickly realized that when it comes to client money, there is zero margin for error. Failure to produce documents. A licensee must provide documents, records, and information when requested by the commissioner or during an audit. Failing or refusing to produce required documents is itself a violation. For example, if Audrey requests transaction files and the agent cannot provide them, that becomes a compliance issue, even if the original transaction was handled properly. This ties directly back to record keeping. If it's not documented and accessible, it doesn't exist in the eyes of the regulator. Fair housing violations. Violating federal fair housing laws, Arizona civil rights laws, or similar local ordinances is a direct ground for discipline. This includes discriminatory advertising, unequal treatment of clients, or refusal to work with certain protected classes. For example, saying "perfect for young families" in an ad, steering clients toward or away from certain neighborhoods, or refusing to show property based on protected characteristics can all lead to serious consequences. Jessica understood that fair housing is not just a topic in class, it is one of the most enforced areas in real estate law. False or inaccurate reports. Providing a report known to be false or inaccurate is another violation. For example, submitting a wood infestation report that is outdated, incorrect, or never actually conducted can create liability. Another example is relying on inspection reports without verifying their validity. Accuracy is not optional, it is required. Negligence and lack of supervision. A broker who fails to supervise agents properly can be disciplined, just as an agent can be disciplined for negligence in performing license duties. For example, a broker who does not review transactions or enforce policies may be held responsible for violations within the brokerage. An agent who fails to follow through on required tasks, misses deadlines, or overlooks critical details may be considered negligent. Jessica realized that supervision and performance are directly tied to compliance. Selling the wrong property. It may sound extreme, but selling or leasing a property that is not the one represented to the buyer is a violation. For example, misidentifying parcel boundaries, confusing units in a multi-property transaction, or presenting incorrect property information can lead to serious consequences. This highlights the importance of verifying details before presenting them to clients. Violating commissioner standards. Any violation of the commissioner's rules, including advertising, disclosure, or supervision requirements, can result in discipline. This ties everything together. Every rule learned in this course is enforceable, and failure to follow any of them can lead to corrective action. Forgery and unauthorized signatures. Signing another person's name without written consent is a serious violation. For example, signing a client's name on a contract to save time or submitting documents without proper authorization can lead to immediate disciplinary action. Jessica saw this happen when an agent thought they were helping move a deal forward quickly, but instead created a major legal issue. Bringing it all together. Details define discipline. Section 15 introduced the major grounds for corrective action. Section 16 shows how those rules apply in everyday situations. The common thread is this: most violations are not dramatic. They are small details handled incorrectly, a missing signature, an unclear disclosure, a late payment, an unauthorized action. Jessica realized that protecting her license wasn't about avoiding big mistakes. It was about consistently getting the small things right. Because in Arizona real estate, discipline doesn't just come from what you do wrong, it comes from what you fail to do right. Online discussion 1. Why are small administrative mistakes treated as serious compliance issues in real estate? Answer: because even small errors can impact clients, transactions, and public trust, making accuracy and consistency critical in maintaining professional standards. 2. What is the biggest risk when handling client funds improperly? Answer: the biggest risk is severe disciplinary action, including license suspension or revocation, because mishandling funds directly impacts consumer protection. 3. Why is it important to have written authorization before placing signage on a property? Answer: because it ensures legal permission and protects property owners, preventing unauthorized representation or misrepresentation.